Imagine this, you're a boy in the Roman Empire. One day you're playing in the streets. The next, you're chained, inspected, and sold. Not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as something far worse. You have no freedom, no family, no future. You are now a concubine, property of Rome's most powerful men. Behind the glittering palaces and golden feasts lies your new reality. Humiliation, silence, and endless suffering. This is the dark fate of a male concubine in ancient Rome. The Roman Empire was the greatest superpower of its age. Its armies crushed nations, emperors ruled like gods, and monuments of marble still stand to this day. But behind all that glory was a cruel truth. Rome didn't just conquer lands, it conquered bodies. Slavery was everywhere. From prisoners of war to poor debtors, millions were forced into bondage. And hidden within this massive system was a group rarely spoken about, yet deeply tied to the empire's elite: male concubines. They weren't partners, they weren't lovers, they were tools, boys turned into possessions, forced to satisfy the desires of Rome's most powerful men. For Rome, it was just another custom. For the boys, it was a nightmare without escape. But who were these boys? How were they chosen? And what dark reality awaited them once they entered this hidden world? Male concubines in ancient Rome were not ordinary slaves. Some were dragged from the ashes of war. Others were bought like cattle in crowded markets. And the most tragic of all, some were handed over by their own families, sold in exchange for survival. What set them apart? Beauty, youth, silence. They were chosen not for strength, but for their faces, their obedience, their ability to surrender completely. Wives carried status, mistresses held some freedom. But concubines, they were nothing more than property, decorations of flesh owned by Rome's most powerful men. In Roman eyes, masculinity meant dominance. To be a concubine was to be stripped of it all. Their manhood stolen, their dignity crushed, even their very names erased. They were not men anymore. They were not even slaves. They were possessions, breathing tools, shadows in marble palaces, and yet their nightmare was only beginning. The path into this life was rarely chosen. It was forced. At slave auctions, boys as young as 12 were displayed like cattle. Wealthy men in white togas inspected their bodies, judged their beauty, and decided their worth. Some boys came as spoils of war, dragged across borders in chains. Others were sold in secret deals for shocking prices. From the moment they were chosen, their fate was sealed. Their names were erased, their past forgotten, their lives rewritten. They belonged to someone else now. Inside the palace, life was no less cruel. A concubine lived under constant watch. He could not speak unless spoken to. He could not refuse. He could not resist. Every order had to be obeyed. Every moment was controlled. Concubines were expected to serve at meals, entertain in private chambers, and be available at all times. Their role was not about love. It was about power. Even the smallest mistake, wrong words, wrong look, wrong silence, could lead to punishment. Some were beaten. Some were sold to crueler masters, and some simply vanished. Luxury surrounded them, but none of it belonged to them. For concubines, Rome's golden palaces were nothing more than cages. More painful than chains was humiliation. Concubines lost everything: family, freedom, even their names. Masters often gave them new names, mocking nicknames, or titles that erased their past. They were forbidden from living as men. They had no right to marry, no right to raise children, no right to decide anything about their own bodies. Over time, many forgot who they once were. They became shadows of themselves, alive but only to serve someone else's will. It was not just slavery of the body, it was slavery of the soul. The life of a male concubine was not only humiliating, it was dangerous. Abuse was constant. Violence was common. With no law to protect them, concubines could be beaten, tortured, or killed at their master's whim. If a concubine gained too much attention or influence, jealousy grew. Rivals plotted, and sometimes death followed. Diseases also spread in silence. With no medical care, many concubines died young, their bodies broken by years of neglect and exploitation. At any moment, a life could be ended, and history would not even remember their names. One of the most infamous stories is that of Sporus, a young boy caught in the grasp of Emperor Nero. Nero forced him to be castrated. Then he dressed Sporus as a woman, gave him jewels and silk, and called him his wife. For Rome, this was entertainment. For Sporus, it was pure tragedy. After Nero's death, Sporus was passed from one powerful man to another, each treating him as an object. Finally, unable to endure any more, he took his own life. Sporus' story is one of the few we know. Imagine how many more were lost forever. Rome is remembered as great. Its roads, its armies, its emperors shaped history. But the lives of male concubines reveal the empire's darkest truth. Its power was built not just on conquest, but on cruelty. Behind every victory celebration, behind every marble monument, were the cries of the powerless. The empire that ruled the world could not even protect the dignity of its own people. Rome is remembered as one of the greatest empires in history. Its armies conquered nations. Its emperors ruled like gods, and its marble monuments still stand after 2,000 years. To the world, Rome was glory, civilization, and power. But behind that greatness was a much darker truth. Rome's power was not built only on victory in battle or wealth from its provinces. It was built on human lives. And among the most tragic of those lives were the boys forced to live as concubines. These boys were not partners. They were not respected. They were treated as objects, valued for their beauty, their youth, and their silence. In a society that worshipped dominance, they lost everything. Freedom, dignity, even their names. They became possessions, breathing shadows in glittering palaces. Luxury surrounded them, but none of it belonged to them. The marble halls, the golden feasts, the jewels and silks were never theirs. For them, Rome's palaces were cages, prisons where every moment was controlled and every order had to be obeyed. Punishment was constant. A wrong word, a wrong look, even silence at the wrong time could mean a beating, or worse. Some were sold to crueler masters. Some simply vanished, their lives ending without a trace, their names never written in history. And yet their suffering was not only physical, it was deeper. It was humiliation that crushed the soul. They were stripped of the right to marry, the right to have families, the right to decide anything about their own bodies. Over time, many forgot who they once were. They became shadows of themselves, alive but only to serve someone else's will. The story of Sporus shows us this cruelty in its sharpest form. A boy taken by Emperor Nero, castrated, dressed in silks, and forced to play the role of a wife. For Rome, it was entertainment. For Sporus, it was tragedy. Passed from man to man after Nero's death, his life ended in despair when he could no longer endure. His name survives in history, but how many others did not? This is Rome's hidden truth. The same empire that built great monuments could not protect the dignity of its own people. The same Rome that gave the world laws and roads also gave the world cruelty, disguised as power. And so, when we remember Rome, we must remember all of it, the glory and the horror, the triumphs and the tragedies. Because history is not just the story of emperors and armies. It is also the story of the forgotten, the silenced, the powerless. Behind every victory celebration, behind every marble monument, were cries the world chose not to hear. Rome ruled the world, but it could not save its own humanity.